The next step to this is adding a hover state. One of the things that we want to be able to work on is to take this state and really make it dynamic. Right now, if I click on the link, the only thing that hovers is the background. So what I want to do is actually, let's go in, let's actually find our links here, and let's change the hover state. That's going to cover a whole pile of different problems, but you know what? We're here to fix them and learn how to fix them. So I'm going to change the background color. Let's go background color. Let's change this to a good black. I might use #000. So let's reload this. And of course, nothing happens. And the reason nothing is happening is because the background color isn't changing yet because we have a div that's overriding it. So why don't we turn that div off just to see what happens. So I'm just going to turn this div off here. I'm actually going to make a problem. I'm just going to even change this to X to see what happens. I'm going to reload the page, and now that background color turns black. So what begins to happen is the hover state begins to actually conflict with the div. So what we want to do is we want to think about it maybe not using a div. So this is where we now start changing things. I guess I'm not going to be using a div. Maybe I'm going to start using a class. So this is really one of the exciting things. And one of the things that I've seen is that if I actually wipe this out, maybe I might not get the effect that I want. So let's think about the effects. There's a couple of ways to do stuff. I said in CSS, there's multiple ways to do things. One, I can actually add the background color or the padding to the actual anchor link itself, but that's not helpful because I really want to be able to direct the look and feel onto certain things. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to actually come back here. I'm going to actually get rid of this generic anchor link here, and we're going to do something with them. I could actually even keep them there. Let's get rid of that background color. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a technique where I begin to actually focus some of my code in specific divs. So in this case, if I want to only change the div and the anchor link within that div, what I can do is I can actually change the background color to one thing only that falls within that div. So I'm going to do red. I'm actually going to delete this right now so you can see this work. I'm going to reload the page. And of course, in this case, nothing is working because I haven't set a lot of these things in place. I haven't set the hover state. So now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to put hover. I reload the page. And of course, I haven't put in button X here. So of course, things aren't working. I save everything again. I hit reload. So one of the things that I realize is we've tried to attach the div and follow along with what I've done, that I've actually broken it myself. And let's fix it. I've added a div, and I've told it to, inside of that div, change every background color. Maybe we'll even change this to yellow so that we can notice what happens within that link. So there's two ways to handle links. I can add an actual ID onto the anchor link itself. And again, we're talking about multiple ways of working, cleaning things, and fixing things. I can actually add a class. But one of the things that I can also do to really, really change this is I can actually add this ID, this anchor, into a div by itself that's sitting by itself, just hanging out, waiting for me to add code to it. I'm going to take the button X. I'm going to add a div, and that div is the only thing that's inside of that div is a link. So I'm going to reload the page, and now you notice that now that link is working. And one of the things that I've done is I've actually gone in and decided that, and you can't see the background color, is that I'm going to actually add the changes that I wanted to into the button X div. So of course I'm going to add some of these changes right here. I'm going to make this maybe 50, make this 50 again, reload it, and now it picks up a lot of the transparencies that are happening. Let's change the hover state to something else. Let's maybe even change the background color from here. Let's get rid of it here. Let's reload the page, and now the hover state is red. And of course, what I've done is I've specifically said only affect the hover state within very specific areas. So this is actually a technique that I can use, and we'll talk more about optimizing techniques in the next chapter, of choosing a specific div and only affecting specific global tags that inside of it. You notice that what I did is, in order to make it work, I put in the ID, I hit space, I put in the global tag. I actually don't even need the active word. So I hit save, I hit reload, and of course, because it wasn't active, it pops back up, and here you go. And you notice one of the things that happened is that it didn't pick up a lot of the spacing that I wanted it to. And that was just because I'm using display block, and because there's actually, it's trying to space the border of the actual div itself. So again, I'm using a technique. I'm really inherently targeting a specific link. And you'll notice that what I did is, here's my border. I don't want that. I actually want it to be filled in entirely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the padding out of here. I'm going to get rid of it here, and then I'm going to apply it into my anchor link. I save it. I reload the page, and you now notice that the whole thing becomes active and fills in the div. So I can get rid of the border here. I can reload it, and now I have a very dynamic link that I'm only creating a specific hover state for it. But you notice that one of the things with this technique is that I'm always experimenting with CSS. I'm trying an ID within a button. In that case, think about the hierarchy. You always put a div on top. You actually put things inside of the divs and then go from there. And if you need to stylize it, you can use classes or global tags. Really the most amazing thing about this technique, and you notice that of me playing and changing and editing, is we always want to go back to the basics. Think about if something's not broken, put it in a div. It's okay. You can use multiple divs. Divs are empty containers that have a specific ID, and then we can actually start working within them. If I would create another button, I would do the same thing. I'd create an ID. I'd put an empty div around it, just like I did here, and now I have the link inside of it. So there's a lot of power. I've added a hover state. I've added the positioning. I've added the z-index. I could also add transparency. Next up, let's maybe even add some graphics too.